Everybody, welcome back to another episode. I am delighted to bring to you all today Mr. Sri Solur. He is the CEO of Kenmore and Brands, and I know you know Kenmore. We're going to talk about what that means. I know you know the brand. He's a former executive at Hewlett Packard, now known as HP, Comcast, and he's also run and built some products that it is highly likely you've used and have in your home today. Sri, I'm so glad we make this happen. Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Jason.
Yes. What did I miss in the introduction that you think people should know about you?
You pretty much got my whole career, maybe my childhood, man.
What's your inner child? We're gonna get right into therapy. So tell us about your most trip now.
No, it's actually a phenomenal question. Yeah. Because as an inner child, it was all about building products.
Yeah.
And since a very young age.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell.
Early on, it was
if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends.
I used to build
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And give us a shout out. Or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com.
I've always been building products.
We love hearing from our listeners because
I like
cool
it. So you're not
too.
just the builder, you're also the business person too, which is a very good combo. Because some people are like, I love to build, but they don't know how to sell. You know how to sell and build, which is likely why you do what you do now. That's awesome. Do you remember the very first thing you built?
Yeah, it was a vacuum tube based radio, AM radio, and there was this big antenna that you had to unfurl across your living room. And that was one of the very first products that I built with my mom.
Yeah, and you're mentioning before we kicked off, your mom was obviously an engineer as well. She worked on satellite technology, which is really cool.
Yeah, solar panels, solar cells, and basically that went into satellites that are still orbiting our world. Yeah, that's what my mom did.
So let's talk about you as a child. You were a builder. You got some education. You got into the workforce. Let's take a little tour through a little bit of your career path. What led us to here today? Where did you start? I'm always interested in people that have gotten to high level positions. What's like the first couple things you did when you got full time into the workforce?
Simple. I worked on products like Alta Vista. And Alta Vista, the world knows Alta Vista as a search engine. Yeah. I worked on the security side of Alta Vista, which was firewall, antivirus, intrusion detection. And that was a part of DEC, or Digital Equipment Corporation.
Yeah, sure.
And DEC was bought over by Compaq.
Yep.
And Compaq was bought by HP.
Yeah.
And so I woke up one fine morning and I had spent 20 years in multiple companies without actually leaving a company.
Yeah.
So the beauty of that 20-year tenure is I lived and worked in multiple countries. Mm-hmm. So in that 20-year tenure, I worked in India. I worked in Singapore. I worked close to around 7 years in the UK, specifically in London. I did a stint in Sweden. I did a stint in France. And then, of course, both coasts in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So that amazing journey, and this is not just in one role. It was a plethora of roles, from product development, from to corporate ventures, where you build startups and also do minority equity investments, mm-hmm. running operations. And that was my really big internship. I look at this as like a 20-year internship in different roles, in different geographies. But at the end of the day, in some shape, way, or form, I was keenly tuned to building products and businesses.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Do you remember your first people manager role?
Vividly.
You got a smile on your face. For those listening, he's got a smile. I always like to ask people that have had a good career, because usually, and I'm gonna give the punchline. Usually people go, I had no effing idea what I was doing. How did it go for you with like your first couple of roles where they said, hey, Sri, you're gonna have some staff as people work for you? How did it go? Like, what was it like for you as you started managing people and leading?
It went extremely well. It went extremely well for multiple reasons. And I'm going to take this back to my childhood. I grew up in a joint family. So
okay, yeah,
working and adapting to the environment and putting yourself in someone else's shoes was absolutely needed growing up in a joint family. Otherwise, you could get beaten by your bigger cousins or your uncles. So you know where the swampy deltas are, Jason, and you want to make sure that doesn't become your Vietnam. So the point is, like, really understanding the people dynamics and making sure that there is enough empathy in the system was something that came naturally to me.
Yeah.
The second thing is having a blue-collared work ethic. Very early on, I learned, and again, taught by my mom, is always be the first at work, especially in the early days of your career, and be the last one to get out. There is nothing wrong. You're going to learn. There is optics. So you are modeling the right behavior in the sense that, look, this is a company that's feeding me, and just having that kind of gratitude and loyalty was very important, not just to the company, but also to the team, because that is the team that is making me successful. So that was something that was really, really important to me, and that worked extraordinarily well in my favor. So that's a second piece. The third piece is inspiring was like really important. When people walk into offices, there is a lot that they might have gone through at home, through the traffic at home. Yeah. If you can say something that's going to put a smile on their face, it doesn't have to be ruinous empathy, right?
Yes.
But saying something that's going to make their life a little bit better and inspiring them to do better is really important. But as you're doing that, you also want to make sure that there is radical candor. Like, for example, if there is something that is not really going well, the most respectful thing to do is to tell the person that it's not going well, because everyone is capable of change. So just adding those pieces, that naturally was imbued into me, made me enjoy my position, my first position as a people manager. And I have never looked back. I always feel like in every relationship, every conversation, you should never take more than you can give. And if you can imbue that, you'll be a phenomenal people manager, number one. And two, you will actually build a following of people who are going to root for you to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, some great lessons in there, Sri. I like all of it. One of the things is the idea of the following. And you worked in some really competitive corporate structures, like DEC to Compaq to HP is it's just very competitive when you go through. I went through some mergers and acquisitions as well. There can be a lot of the behind the back stuff and the politics and all that. And the idea of building a following, and I call it like your personal brand, and known as that sort of leader, it's a really good reminder for me, and I think for everybody listening, that matters. Because that's one of the things that I think gets forgotten sometimes, is it's not just about the how-to or motivating your team for the maximum output, but also will they go into battle with you? Will they say, if he leaves, I'm going with him, like that sort of thing? Now, I'm going to ask you a question that's a follow along to this. As a longtime people leader and manager, how do you address it when you know there are people on your team that don't have that same drive or spark? Like the interview process goes well as they come in, and then they just die. Because I've known you for 22 minutes, and you're obviously a very passionate individual. Consider myself a pretty passionate individual too. So when you see somebody, like, it doesn't feel like you're into it, how do you address that as a leader? Knowing that you need those people to perform in order to hit your business goals and do what you're paying them to do.
Look, there are two frameworks that I use, very simple frameworks. The first framework that I use is I evaluate the person on my team for the 3 C's. The first C is competency, right? Is that person really, really smart? Because in terms of, do they know the job? Do they know their craft well? It's really important, right? Especially if you're in engineering, if you're in finance, you need to know that craft well. The second C is, in addition to competence, is, I would say, consistency. Yeah. Consistency is like just showing up day after day. I'll tell you, making progress week after week, because these small steps of progress adds up very quickly. The compounding power, if you will, right? Consistency is so important. I will take a person who is consistent versus a person who's a genius and not consistent any day of the week, right? That's really
absolutely
important.
Well, if I could interject you, that's an athletics thing too. In any sport you look at, any team sport at least, the star player on the team is, most coaches would tell you they'd rather have consistent players that aren't the best player than the best player who's a diva. And you can see this in certain sports right now. That's so critical. I really like, that's so critical to have that. And then when you get the superstar who's also consistent, you're like, how much do we need to pay you to keep you forever and ever and ever? What do you need? What do you need? What do you need?
Now that you brought up the sports piece, there is a third C, which is connection, because winning is a team sport, Jason.
Yes.
Is the connection. So the first framework that I use is to see if a person has competence, consistency, and connection. That's the first framework that I see. And then the second framework is, what I call as a gap kind of framework, which is, does that person have a growth mindset? Does that person genuinely wants to learn? Like, it doesn't have to be work related. It could be in any walk of life. Is that person growth oriented? The second one is that person authentic? Authenticity matters quite a bit. And the third thing is that person passionate, right? If I see that is the GAP, if I see that they are faring well in those 6 aspects of 2 frameworks, it's a very simple thing. All I have to do is inspire, enable, encourage, and challenge.
Yeah.
And I just have to weigh in. Some people respond very well to challenges. Some people respond very well to inspiring versus challenging. So you just have to figure out in which quadrant they are, because at the end of the day, it's such a short life. You as a leader, if you are genuinely not focusing on developing people, you're not a leader.
Yeah.
You are absolutely not a leader. So you have to give that person the benefit of doubt, give all the chances. And there are even times when I tell people, I want you to use this platform on our team to go get your next big role.
Yeah.
And the choice of sentences here, of words here, Jason, is I try to put myself as one among equals, not like, hey, you're on my team. I always say we work together. Yeah. You don't work for me. We work together, because you know what? I learn from members of my team as much as they learn from me. Sure. And that is a learning mindset that a leader should always have. So just to summarize, I have 2 frameworks, and then I figure out if it is inspire versus challenge. And finally, radical candor. You don't need to be aggressive. You don't need to be manipulative. You don't need to have ruinous empathy. Say things as they are, and say it in a nice way.
Yeah. Beautiful. I would guess if I was going to interview some of the people that work for you, have worked for you, they would say they were very fortunate to have you as somebody in their sphere of influence in the business context. Sri, I want to ask you, I want to pivot a little bit. You've done a lot of things. One of the things you've done is you have a lot of expertise in a variety of spaces around product. So we're going to play a little, it's not going to be 20 questions, but I have a couple questions for you about your career and some of the things that you've launched or built or enhanced. And a lot of these brands people will know. So I'm really curious, what's the most challenging product you've ever worked on or had or launched? What was the most challenging product?
Oh, it was a consumer robot called the Shark IQ robot.
Like the Shark brand, right? Like SharkNinja? Yeah.
So I built one of the first advanced navigation robots. And Shark, from a company perspective, is a phenomenally consumer-focused company. It's unbelievable.
We have a lot of Shark products in our house, like the mops, and we had the robot. We have a whole bunch of Shark stuff.
And let me assure you, like Shark and Ninja products, the quality is way up there. It never breaks. I can openly say. So in that environment, building a high-tech product, especially when there are companies like iRobot,
right,
that dominated that space, and a company that built mechanical products, but this is a high-tech product. That robot had 47 million lines of code.
And what did this robot do? What was the function of it?
It basically cleaned your home, but it went back to the base. It auto-emptied, but it drew the map of the house.
Yeah.
And think about it. If you ask how many software engineers were there in Shark at that point in time, I can literally count on my hand and say maybe 4, 5, 6,
Wow.
But 47 million lines of code. So how the heck are you going to build a product? And wait a minute, it's December and I need to launch this product in the market. Retail set dates are August.
Right.
And I'm very proud of what we did as a team. And we delivered a product. And the beauty of that is also really interesting. We built it in such a way that, we did not break any intellectual property of any company.
Nice.
We built a phenomenally competitive product in the marketplace. It was more suction at half the price of the leading advanced nav product. Think about it. More suction at half the price.
Yeah. I was going to say, we've been owners of a variety of robot vacuums. We've had an iRobot. We've had a couple of Sharks. That's also an example of a product that actually has to work pretty perfectly, or you're never going to buy one again. If the sensors don't work, if it goes down the stairs, if it tangles itself in wires, it actually has to work well. A mop is a mop. But that robot, if you get a robot, you're like, well, it kind of senses the dog when it's sitting there, but also hits the dog. And then our kid gets there, you're not going to buy another one. I don't think most people would. So it's one of those things you really have to get right.
And the corner cases associated. It's not just with cleaning, right? Because you have things like edge cleaning. You have cleaning on tile and grout, and there is stuck on dust, and there are like 50 parameters associated with cleaning. But wait a minute, there are another 50 parameters associated with navigation.
Yep.
All right. There are another 50 parameters on lobster trapping in the sense that you have kids' Lego toys, you have wires, and a house is a minefield.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And you have to be able to navigate all that. There are 50 parameters on the app connectivity.
Yep.
And it's such a complex thing to build and deliver in such a short period of time, and then having a value proposition which is like more suction at half the price.
Yeah.
And the beauty of building something like that, right? In hindsight, I feel so good of many of the products that I've built. I'll tell you, there's one hallmark here, Jason, and it's just all products that I've built are affordable innovation.
Sure.
It's made for the masses. It's not a diva kind of product that only the top 5% or 10% of the world can buy. You need to make a product which genuinely has an impact to the mainstream.
Yeah.
And that product had impact to the mainstream. It had such a massive impact that it took our competitive stock price down by 50%.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And that gave me extraordinary levels of satisfaction that we, on multiple levels. One, a company that did not have the tech DNA, we were able to imbue the tech DNA in a company.
Yeah, because it's SharkNinja is the name of the company, right? Is that the official name? SharkNinja is not a robotics company by any stretch of the imagination. And iRobot, if we're just going to say the name of it, with the leader, they started as a robotics company, if I'm not mistaken, and then decided, hey, here's a thing that we can sell to the consumers at a barely sub $1,000 price when it came out. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and look, the thing that I admire is the insane focus on the consumer. I worked for a lot of companies. I see that in Amazon outside in, and I speak to a lot of people in Amazon. The insane focus, the long-term view of building products so that your consumers love you after 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 2 decades. That mindset is deeply ingrained in SharkNinja as a company, which I absolutely positively admire. But adding that tech component, which kind of was not in the DNA, and then now you look at the company, they're coming up with a lot of tech products. I feel very fortunate to be, have been in that inflection point and have worked with some of the brightest minds, both on consumer insights on one side and tech on the other, and able to do that and bring a product to market with such a huge impact. It makes me smile.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd like to hear what you're up to now, and I'd love to hear what's led you from that part of your career to sitting here today. It's the middle of June, 2023. You're currently the CEO of Kenmore and Brands. I think most people listening will go, Kenmore, I know that name. What led you to the seat you're in today? Like, what was your path there? And then let's talk about what you and your team are doing.
Great. In terms of what led me here, serendipity.
Usually is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's usually is. It's not like I woke up and said, I want to be a CEO of an appliance company. If you had asked me, let's say 10 years ago, if I wanted to be an appliance company, I would be like, why? I'm so happy to be in a high-tech company focusing on building wearables and like CloudPrint and platforms that are so tech focused. I would have never, ever, guessed that I would be a CEO of an appliance company. So, in my previous role, I was the chief product officer of an industrial robotics company, Berkshire Grey. Again, a company with a DNA of innovation. Very fortunate to have been in that role. And both the roles, both in SharkNinja and Berkshire Grey, that I was in during my tenure, both the companies went public. So that's a role where, during my tenure, that transition happened. And just like this, a recruiter called, had a conversation. They said it's a CEO of a company. And I had my first round of interviews, the second round, and it just got more and more interesting. And I took over as a CEO of Kenmore last year. I'm like a little over, I would say, 14 months, time frame here with Kenmore. And what I'm trying to do here is, from a brand perspective, Kenmore as a brand was developed in 1913. Over 100 years.
Yeah, so it's a very old, like old and traditional brand in a really positive way. It's like a highly recognized American brand, right?
Yeah. 93%, in terms of brand recognition. It's about, if you go to YouGov.America, go take a look. Kenmore is about Bosch and Maytag and a spectacular array of brands, way, way, way up there in terms of brand recognition and brand love. And the secret to that? Every decade, the brand has reinvented itself.
Really?
Yeah, like has done something different, something new, something cool. And the very thought of being a part of that Phoenix moment. And Kenmore products were only available at Sears stores for a very long time. And as the number of Sears stores were closing, the Kenmore retail revenue kept falling. But then, in the last year or so, as we have started to externalize the Kenmore brand, you could walk into a Target right now and you could go buy Kenmore branded products in Target.
And I didn't know that. Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's cool.
Go check out our microwaves and our compact refrigerators, or go look at vacuum cleaners in places like BJ's, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, long story short, we took this amazing brand and we said, we're going to set it free.
Yeah.
On one side, with other distribution channels where Americans across demographics have a love for Kenmore products. And I'll tell you, the baby boomers and Gen Xers, of course, they walked into Sears stores and they knew about Kenmore.
Yeah.
Jason, Gen Zs love Kenmore, which, when I took over, I was scratching my head and I was like, how the heck?
Yeah.
I have a 16-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And Kenmore, only to realize that it reminds them of their grandmother's cooking.
I was going to say, I was just thinking to myself, I was thinking, what did my grandparents have? And I'm pretty sure one of my grandparents had a Kenmore range, and that it's wonderful. Like, it's a wonderful thought. It's a very nice thought. It was the number one brand at one. That was like GE and Kenmore were the 1 and 2 appliance brands in the 50s and 60s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, like now, being at the helm of a company that has brands like Kenmore and Die Hard is a part of being a part of history.
It is.
And being a part of the Phoenix moment, the renaissance of the next generation of Kenmore. And we very early on figured out and said Kenmore equals live more, in the sense that we want to enable affordable innovations to all Americans, focusing on clean air, clean water, energy conservation, and water conservation. And one more thing that I want to highlight, Jason.
Yeah.
The live more part of Kenmore. Everybody wants to live longer and better quality of life. And ultimately, what I want to be able to do is set this company on a trajectory where we can enable people to lead better quality and longer lives. That today is, if you're a billionaire, or a very rich person, you could basically afford that. But if I can make that accessible to a common man by developing products and solutions for a family to live healthier, cleaner lives, that's what I want to focus on. And look, we just got air purifier products out. You will see more and more high-tech products coming into the market, wherein you can make healthier choices as you shop, healthier choices as you cook, as you store. And I also want to make sure we are easy on the environment with clean air. With energy conservation and water conservation. So you'll see more and more products from Kenmore focused on those categories. And just being a part of that rejuvenation is what excited me for both Kenmore and DieHard. Later this year, you'll see from a DieHard brand perspective, EV chargers. There's a rise of electric vehicles in the market. So you'll see EV chargers. You will see a bunch of power tools. Think DieHard is garage, Kenmore is the home. So that's how you want to see the positioning of the two products.
Oh man, that's super cool, Shri. We just got an EV, and so I'm like, I did not know DieHard is coming out with a charger, like a level 2 charger, like on a 240 volt.
Yes, sir.
Amazing. Yeah. That talk about that space is interesting. We just got our first EV. Amazing. And I'm like, which charger should I get? That is a crowded market. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of options for level 2 EV home chargers. So it's cool because DieHard is obviously a brand that's trusted. Like, oh, I know that brand. That makes sense because a lot of those products in that space that the companies are not famous at all. There's a lot of seems to be a lot of niche stuff in there.
Jason, I'll also tell you one other thing. When was your home built?
Our home was built in 2011.
2011. You're lucky. Let me give you an example of a couple of our customers whose homes were built, one in the 70s, one before the 90s. They were excited like you and went and got an electric vehicle. They came home. They picked up an EV charger from Amazon and called the electrician. What happened after is something that we are seeing day in and day out. In those scenarios, the electrician will come home. They'll look at the electrical panel. They'll say, oh my God, you only have a 100 amp circuit. And
can't put another 50 in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't put an EV charger in here. So do me a favor, call your utility company.
Oh boy.
You're in California, you call PG&E. They come in, they look at your home and they say, oh, no problem. We'll put a higher amperage pipe, but we have to dig up your front yard. It's going to be $20,000 on a 6-month project.
Right. To support your EV.
And in those scenarios, you know what we do? We say, don't worry about it. We can help you. What we do is we have worked, we have relationships in the market with companies like Span. We put a digital electrical panel wherein when you're using your electric water heater, and let's say your EV charger is on, we throttle the electricity between the two so that the upstream amperage is never exceeds the limit in the scenarios. And you didn't have to wait 6 months and pay $20,000.
Well, because that, my understanding is panels in the past it's planned that you can have up to this, and at any time you can hit that capacity. And what you're saying with a lot of the smart technology, what you're doing with Span, and I've heard of Span, it will figure out and it'll say,
balance.
Load balance. We're going to charge the car at night. We know the microwave's not going to be on. We're going to time it and let the electrical system do that as opposed to me having to think about it myself, which is brilliant because I'm not going to know. Like, how many people know about amperage in their house? Not many. Not at any sort of level of sophistication.
And here is the kicker. It's very, very hard to find electricians. You got to pull permits.
Yep.
And in many cases, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act that has been passed, Inflation Reduction Act has been passed, which is a bipartisan bill that was passed last year. If you're in a low and moderate income household, you could get rebates potentially up to $14,000.
Yeah.
So that means the installation of the panel, maybe a heat pump based water heater, and the EV charger could all be covered mostly by the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yep.
And maybe with some subsidies. So the point that I'm trying to highlight is the government is actually shoveling money into people's pockets to buy appliances that's going to focus on whole home electrification because that helps with the energy security of the country. It's a bipartisan agenda.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And Kenmore basically has all the relationships from the electric appliances, the energy appliances like EV charger, and the relationships to install, project manage, pull permits, and literally do an end-to-end kind of architecture, planning, design, implementation, management of your whole home electrification. And I think that is a very, very unique position. And of course, Kenmore is a brand that is well known in all parts of the US. So it softens the technology aspects. Like you said, some unknown EV charger. If you had seen a diehard EV charger or a Kenmore EV charger, hey, you know what?
I know that brand.
I can trust that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sri, I want to wrap up for today and get some lessons for the audience. Anything that you may have maybe let's keep it to three that come to mind. Lessons you learned from your business career as a leader, as a product person, as all the different roles you played. What are some things that you've learned? And I always like to frame this as, if I had you on here when you first started your career, what do you wish you would have known that you know now? And maybe we can save some people some grief, or maybe not. They'll probably hear it and go, "Good advice," and they'll do it anyway, because that's what humans do, right? That's what we do. Yeah. What do you have for us?
It's all intuitively obvious ones. The number one thing is leadership has to be earned. It's never bestowed. In every day, you go in, prove yourself as a leader. It has to be earned every day, every moment. That's number one. It's never bestowed. Always tell yourself that winning is a team sport. Winning is a team sport. It's never about you. It's about the team. And the third thing is, I'll always say this, in everything that you do, every conversation, every relationship, never take more than you can give. Never, ever take more than you can give.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, my friend. It's a delight to have you on. We'll have you back on. I am personally looking forward to walking around Target and BJ's and all the other places and go, I know that guy. That's super cool. I'm looking forward to seeing what you all have tech enabled in the future, the electrification. Obviously, we're EV shoppers. We believe in that too. We have 2 young children, and that is important to us. And just thank you for all the good work you're doing over there to build and grow the brand and all the cool stuff. Like I said, I was telling Sri before we started that we're a Shark household. We have probably 3 or 4 Shark products. My wife loves her Ninja. So we're on the receiving end in the best way possible of a lot of the things you probably worked on at some point, have had a hand in. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Jason. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.